I call on Deputy McConalogue on behalf of Fianna Fáil.
Tánaiste, the last week has been a very difficult one for people in Greece, but it has also been a very difficult one for many people here in Ireland. Yesterday we saw the callous cuts to lone parents, which will impact on 30,000 single parents and their children across the state. Despite being warned that this is a counterproductive policy which will hurt many, the government have ploughed on with it regardless. This is against a backdrop of the highest number of homeless families ever recorded, with 1,038 children from 490 families being housed in hotels across Dublin alone. Homeless families are increasing month on month, despite the government saying they are taking urgent action. Government policies are making the housing crisis worse instead of better, unfortunately. The government has been good in rhetoric and stating their vision, but it is not taking enough practical decisions to allow families to stay in their home. Only 2 of the 6 banks have passed on reduction in mortgage rates, yet the government are refusing to take any real action to ensure relief for mortgage-paying families. Added to this, your refusal to increase the rent supplement allowance is adding to the increasing problem of families finding themselves without a home. The housing charity Simon did a survey on 1,150 properties available to rent in Dublin recently and found that only 12% of them, 12% Tánaiste, were actually available within the rent supplement cap limit. This situation is seeing families who cannot rent properties being allocated emergency accommodation by housing authorities in hotels. There are families presenting to the Housing First Agency who accommodate rough sleepers for the first time. Focus Ireland again this week called on Minister Kelly to intervene urgently. By refusing to address the issue of rent supplement caps, which have become totally disconnected from the rental market, Tánaiste, you are standing over a vicious circle for these families. My question to you this morning, Tánaiste, is will you agree to increase the rent supplement cap and allowance to help address this problem?
Well, Deputy, you started your comments by referring to the poor unfortunate people in Greece and what has befallen them. And I have to say, I think it must come as a relief to everybody who's in this House that, in fact, what's happened to people in Greece, thankfully, because we have had a managed process of recovery in this economy, that it is not a threat here. You also referenced lone parents. I don't think in Greece there even is such a thing as a lone parents payment. In fact, the basis of the payments in Greece is what pension payments are available to people. And you referenced changes to lone parents. This is the 3rd year of the changes. In this year so far, Deputy, just for Fianna Fáil's information, because it will apply to a lot of your constituents, and you should maybe inform yourself on the issue. We have had contact so far this year with about 25,000 parents on a continuing basis in relation to individual and particularly group interviews in all our Intrio offices to open up the services to lone parents. And already since February, 1,250 lone parents have actually transited to family income supplement, which boosts their family income very, very significantly. And I want you to be aware of that, because I'm quite sure a number of your constituents will directly have benefited from that. And thirdly, in relation to the issues around homelessness, and we have a huge issue around building and providing extra units, and we have a huge issue around building and providing extra units allocated unprecedented levels of funding out of the funds generated by recovery and people going back to work, to building houses and to also leasing and renting houses, and the transfer to HAP. But can I just say this to you, Deputy? As with lone parents, when we set up and established 60 new Intrio offices in this country, we moved from the Department of Social Protection simply paying money to people to the Department of Social Protection having an interaction with people on an individual basis. I sat down with Simon, who came into my offices at my invitation in the context of pre-budget discussions less than a month ago, and they told me, their most senior people, their concern about the issue of housing and housing allocations and homelessness. But they also told me that they were particularly pleased that the one-to-one service through the sustainment protocol that's in operation with Simon and indeed with other organisations like Threshold, and which has seen more than 2,000 cases countrywide where people were worried about rent increases, has seen the rents actually negotiated on a one-by-one basis with the landlords. And that is actually the way we're approaching this, Deputy, and I want you again to be aware of that. And we've rolled out that protocol now right around the country through the Community Welfare Office as requested.
Deputy McConalogue. Deputy McConalogue,
Thank you, Tánaiste, for your response. My specific question to you, Tánaiste, was would you agree to revise and increase the rent allowance cap which you yourself introduced? Now, you proceeded to preach to me on a number of fronts, Minister, but you have avoided answering that particular question to me. The unfortunate reality is that back in 2012, you yourself then reduced the rent allowance cap. And you told us back then, Minister, that you were reducing it to reflect rental market considerations. Now, in the last 3 years, the rental market and rents have increased by 20 to 30%. Yet here today, and over the last number of months, you have refused now to actually amend the rent cap allowances to reflect current market conditions. Instead, you were telling us that individual families who can't actually find a home within the rent allowance caps to actually rent, that instead they should have to go and try and deal with it in a one-on-one basis.
Question, please.
That they should have to go and plead their case cap in hand with their local authority and with the landlord. Well, I can inform you, Tánaiste, that those in rent allowance are not a tool for you to try and affect the rental market. They are people who need housing the same way as anyone else and who are more dependent and vulnerable than anyone else. It is unacceptable for you to leave and oversee a situation where in many parts of this country people who need to find a home actually can't find it within the rent allowance caps that you have there.
Thank you.
Whenever the situation changes, Minister, and when the rules need to change. That was your stance back in 2012. There is no reason why you now should not take the same approach. You can't continue to stand over this situation. Homelessness is growing on a day-by-day basis, and it is down to a lack of action from you that continues. My question again to you this morning, Tánaiste, is will you agree to go back and revise the rent allowance caps over the next few weeks to ensure that this crisis can be addressed?
Thank you.
Well, when Fianna Fáil had finished with the economy in their bubble of greed and speculation, when Fianna Fáil finished with the destruction of the economy, and there's quite a few people in this House who understand what happened in the housing market. Housing stopped. More importantly, because you were well in with a certain type of developer and banker as a party, the building of social housing was no longer regarded as an appropriate social commitment by Fianna Fáil at a time when the economy had never been stronger or boomier.
Thank you, Tánaiste.
So, in relation to your proposal, first of all, I'm going to go back again on what the solution is. We have to build more units and return to the development of social housing, which your party callously abandoned the people who need social housing. Your party callously abandoned the people who need social housing. And secondly,
Listen, will you stay quiet? This is Leader's question. It's not your question, it's his question. Now.
And secondly, I just said to you, I meet the organisations dealing with housing issues on a regular basis.
Thank you, we're over time.
The market in terms of social housing is about 30% of the rental market, and what you're suggesting is we should drive increases in rents for people at work and paying their own rent. What we are doing is helping families on a one-to-one basis. We regularly text all of the people where we have their mobile phone numbers to tell them if they've any query and difficulty with a landlord, and I want to repeat this message here. Will they please contact the social welfare community services, and they will get help specifically, as over 2,000 families so far have done this year in renegotiating.
Thank you. Deputy MacDonald. Thank you.